Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's regular City of Cedar Falls Committee of the Whole meeting. Madam Clerk, call to order. It's been after a holiday, just getting back into this. Roll call, please.
Schultz.
Here.
Latta.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Hallbaker.
Here.
Canfield.
Present.
Crispin.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
All members present, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. You are a present. You are a gift.
Oh, isn't that nice?
All right, item number one, we have a update presentation from Grow Cedar Valley. Whoever would like to take it away, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. My name is Dave Wilson, and I currently serve as the current chair, board of Grow Cedar Valley. On behalf of the organization, I want to express how grateful our Grow Cedar Valley is for our relationship with the City of Cedar Falls. Our partnership is an important part of the work that we do, and we do value the collaboration and trust that make it possible. And as partners, we believe it's essential to have clear expectations and accountability, so we've all shared an understanding of what success looks like. That's why today's presentation will focus on updates from our team and the key metrics that align with our contract. Our goal is to provide a clear, honest picture of the work underway and how it supports the priorities we share with the city. We'd like to thank you tonight for the opportunity to be here and your continued partnership. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Scoble.
Thank you, Dave. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the economic development efforts Grow Cedar Valley is leading on behalf of the City of Cedar Falls. Since our last report, Grow Cedar Valley has actively pursued new business growth and investment opportunities for the city. Since December, we have engaged with 13 new prospects for the City of Cedar Falls, representing more than $137 million of new capital investment. We continue to find that in-person meetings and engagements are the effective way to connect with companies and establish a relationship. That's why lead generation remains a core part of our external marketing initiative. Like any sales process, we start with a broad funnel, reaching out to hundreds of companies and narrowing our focus to those who have interest in Northeast Iowa. In June, we traveled to the Netherlands and had 6 in-person meetings along with 1 virtual meeting. Shane Graham from your staff was able to participate in that event, and it was great to have him along throughout. He certainly brings a wealth of knowledge and shared a lot about what the development opportunities were in the city of Cedar Falls. The companies we met with were at various stages of exploring U.S. expansion. with several waiting to see how tariffs may impact both their current operations and what the future might hold if they expand to the United States. We had planned in-person meetings in Southern California in September, but had to pivot to virtual outreach due to the limited number of confirmed appointments. Our goal going into that initiative was 5 meetings, and to date we have completed 3 virtual meetings with Shane participating in those discussions and representing the city of Cedar Falls. We do not plan to revisit this market next fiscal year, as California has increased its incentives to retain their existing businesses in their state. In September, we hosted 3 global site selection consultants in our community for a 2-day visit, and believe that information was shared by Katie Susong maybe a month ago. They toured Cedar Falls and the industrial park with Shane. All 3 consultants were impressed with the planning and quality of the industrial park and surrounding commercial development that's in Cedar Falls off of Highway 20. Earlier this month, I attended Agritechnica in Hanover, Germany, alongside Mayor Laudick and the state of Iowa's European office. This show brings together global manufacturers of agricultural equipment and the innovation that they're doing moving forward into a new century. During a 2-day period, we met with approximately 17 companies through pre-scheduled appointments. We also met directly with the owners of LaForge and Giant Tobacco at their booths, and also stopped by and visited Zeidberg Frontline System as well. We are actively following up with those meetings. Many companies expressed interest in guidance of establishing U.S. distribution networks, and Mayor and I have talked about how we can help all those different industry sectors realize how that we can connect them with various U.S. distribution networks. Looking ahead for the next 6 months, our plans are for the second half of our fiscal year include another trip to the Netherlands, New York, New Jersey lead generation trip, attendance at the Site Selection Guild Conference, and participation in Select USA in Washington, D.C. We are going to make a few scheduled adjustments for early 2026, but expect to complete most of those initiatives I just mentioned by the end of June. If we don't finish them by the end of June, they will carry over into early our fiscal year, which starts July 1. Lastly, on November 13th, we hosted our first Small Business and Startup Summit with 86 attendees participating. This is an event we didn't know how well it was received, but a lot of the individuals who attended filled out the online survey and wanted us to see it brought back in next year in 2026. So we'll be working with another group of core private and public sector individuals who are passionate about small business and startup. For this first year's summit, it was made possible through a strong collaboration with UNI, SBDC, Hawkeye Community College, both Main Street organizations, financial institutions, and small business owners who served on the Planning Commission. That probably segues in when we talk about helping and supporting our small business and startup with our BRE program. Adrienne Miller has been with us approximately 1 year and has really hit the ground running, and I'm going to turn it over to her to give you an update of what she's been doing since our last report and update with you folks. Thank you.
Lisa. Thanks, Lisa.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Adrienne Miller. I'm the Director of Business Services and Advocacy here at Gross Cedar Valley. Just a reminder of kind of what my position does. I am a resource to all the businesses throughout the Cedar Valley. So that resources can include that workforce and talent. If they're having any issues with that, we can help them find any kind of resource that they might need to help out with that. Any kind of connections with local and state incentive programs, or even support navigating some regulatory issues that are out there as well. So a lot of that data that we collect from these visits too, we actually submit that to the state of Iowa, the Iowa Economic Development Authority. We're one of about 10 communities that submit this quarterly, and that just helps the state with statewide reporting on how the business environment is throughout the state, and then also helps them with strategic planning and policy planning as well. So for Cedar Falls, so far this fiscal year, since July 1st, we've completed 18 BRE visits, and that is compiles over 791 employees that are represented within those businesses. So far, we've really seen a continuance of, the uncertainty due to policy changes, especially with tariffs. That is the probably number one concern we're still seeing from the businesses today. Some have indicated they are learning how to navigate those changes quickly, kind of on the fly. So there's a little bit more calmness to it, but there's still a lot of uncertainty to what's happening out there. So we're seeing a lot of business growth within businesses as well, and have helped transfer some to workforce training programs throughout the Cedar Valley. And overall workforce is pretty steady. There's still some issues finding niche positions throughout the community, but overall workforce tends to be pretty steady. And then that also transitions into our advocacy efforts. So a lot of the information that, like I said, I'm taking in from these businesses, we use that to work on our advocacy side of things as well. So that includes putting together our priorities for the following year. So every year, the Grove Cedar Valley puts together legislative priorities. For the 2026 legislative session, we've put together our key topics around economic development, workforce education, and community development. And that actually, we've gotten really strategic this year on how we have come up with those strategic legislative or priorities within our session this year. We've actually compiled those around the 8 big bets that have come out of the population study. I'll let Steph talk about that a little bit more here in a bit, but we've really kind of been more strategic on how we come up with our legislative priorities. And that continues on with our advocacy throughout different organizations throughout the state. That includes the Iowa Chamber Alliance as well. We're pretty active with them. We have weekly calls with them, just updates on state and federal initiatives that are happening that we need to keep an eye on. For instance, in October, I did take a trip out to DC with them, and we're able to meet with representatives to discuss some issues that are happening right here in the Cedar Valley. So I do have a couple of more trips planned out to DC in the coming months. So we will continue to pass along some of those stories, some of the information that we're coming out of those federal policies that we're seeing from our businesses. We also hold a number of events throughout the year. So we did hold a Friday Forum in October where Mayor Loddick was able to attend. This was a mayoral forum for Waterloo and Cedar Falls. It just gave the opportunity for candidates to interact one-on-one with constituents too. So had a pretty good turnout for that, about 50 attendees for that. We have a few more important events coming up too. On December 17th, we do have a pre-legislative reception coming up that we would love to see all of you at. That is going to be made up of state legislators, just giving their updates on what they see the priorities being for this next legislative session. I think you'll hear a lot about property taxes, in case you didn't know that already. And then we do have Friday forums coming up during legislative session as well. That'll be the second Friday of every month. The first one being January 9th at 8 a.m. at the Community Foundation of the Cedar Valley. So keep an eye on those events. Please sign up, come out, join us. Gives you a good opportunity to have one-on-ones with legislators for our area. And I will pass it over to our workforce, Stephanie and Kelsey.
Thank you, Adrian. And unfortunately, we have our goal-setting session on the 17th, which, I'm sorry, we'll plan ahead next time, but
I'll be there.
I was going to say, we could assign you to go be our liaison. You're still on duty for another couple of weeks.
All right, good evening. I'm Stephanie Detweiler. I'm the Director of Talent and Workforce here at Grove Cedar Valley.
I'm Kelsey Kunkel, and I'm the Talent and Workforce Development Manager at Grove Cedar Valley. New to the team as of July.
I'm going to talk about just kind of overall updates in workforce and talent and let Kelsey talk more about the metrics with our contract. So first and foremost, I wanted to talk about our population study because that's something that's been a huge initiative for us at Grove Cedar Valley. I know a lot of you have been a part of it to this point. Since June, we've had community roundtables, 12 different roundtables with the consultants here in June. And then in October, we had community ideas workshops with our community members. And so the roundtables, we had about 150 people in 12 different roundtables, and that's where the consultants really took in the feedback from our community and kind of framed what Adrian referred to as our 8 big bets. So the 8 big bets is what then they took to our community ideas workshop. If you were at those workshops, you would know kind of what those were and what that looked like. But basically, the goal of the workshops was to get input from our community as to what we should be doing around those different topics. So what ideas our community had, and then our consultants will be taking that. They are actively working on this right now, where they're taking that information, and that's where they're going to create the action plan. They will be involving our steering committee in the action planning process, but the big news is that we have an event scheduled for January 22nd, so make sure to mark your calendars for that. You'll see invitations soon. January 22nd is our big reveal for our population study. We are going to be hosting the event at Gallagher Blue Dorn, which can hold 1,600 people, and we're really hoping that we get 1,600 people to this event because it's a huge deal for our community and what we're going to do moving forward. So again, thank you all for your participation. We've had a lot of participation from Cedar Falls, and I really appreciate that. The next bigger topic I just wanted to mention is Cedar Valley Manufacturing Association. So previously in the past, and I know Mayor Loddick was a part of it at different points, but it's been an entity that stood alone. It was a nonprofit. Manufacturers came together to network and to really kind of come together and figure out, what different things they wanted to go after as a whole in manufacturing. Over the past 6 months, even through input from our consultants, we have decided at Grow Cedar Valley to take CVMA under our umbrella at Grow Cedar Valley with an advisory council of manufacturers sitting at the table, basically telling us kind of their input and what we really need to focus on. So we currently have advisory council members from John Deere, from Power Engineering and Manufacturing, from Viking Pump, from International Paper, from Advanced Heat Treat and O'Neill Manufacturing, and Master Brand Cabinets too. So we have a lot of great input sitting at that table. And so what we are working on now, we just went through visioning and like our mission and vision with them, and we came up with like an update. Basically has 4 focus areas. There's different pillars for this whole group. So it'd be workforce development, advocacy for manufacturing, the image of manufacturing, and innovation and collaboration are kind of our 4 key strategic priorities. So we're still kind of on our end with Grow Cedar Valley putting that together, what that looks like, but we're hoping for programming in early 2026. So stay tuned for more of that. And then the last thing for an overall talent and workforce update is just Kelsey. So we have a new position that just with all the different initiatives we have with workforce and knowing that it's so important for our community, we just felt like it was important to add another position. And so Kelsey's role is really kind of focused around the talent pipeline and connecting industry and education. And she's done a tremendous job already connecting with like our education partners, building great relationships with them, getting input from them. She has a lot of good ideas, and so I think it'll be really cool to see what she does, and she's already has done, which she'll share with you too. But we're excited to have her. So I'm gonna let her talk about the metrics and then.
All right. Hi there, good evening. As I said, my name is Kelsey Kunkel, and my background I kind of bring to Grow Cedar Valley is both entrepreneurial as well as I helped support a work-based learning program as a business developer for the past couple of years in the area. And so what she's, Steph is mentioning as far as this bridging of education to industry is really something that I've been passionate about for the last couple years and beyond. And so it's exciting to be able to bring those thoughts and ideas to bring initiatives to Grow Cedar Valley. So based on the contract this year, we agreed on 4 talent and attractions and/or newcomer-focused marketing campaigns. And so with the nature of our work in talent and workforce development, we have more than 4 that we could initiatives we could speak about. But for tonight's update, we are just going to highlight 4 of them. First one being Cedar Valley Intern Connect. That is exactly what it says, connecting interns to the Cedar Valley. And so that's through networking, community experiences, and employer engagement. That was a summer kickoff event, professional development session, as well as community immersion activities. This event engaged 32 interns, which was an increase from the previous year, as well as 100% of the participants reported feeling more connected to the Cedar Valley, and half of those felt that they would have an increased likelihood of staying in the Cedar Valley. All right, so what's next with that is still planning 2026 program with the Cedar Valley Intern Connect. Another one that I have been able to help kind of get up off the ground, it launched in January, but full program rollout started in this July, right when I started as well, is the Cedar Valley Young Professionals, CVYP. And that's building community and leadership opportunities for young professionals to drive retention in the Cedar Valley. So key activities that we do are monthly meetups, anywhere from professional development opportunities, networking. We have socials and volunteer events. And so we just signed up today for Pack the Dome as one of our community impact events for January. And so we're excited to kind of help guide that group, because it was a group that started prior to also come underneath Gross Cedar Valley's umbrella, but we are able to help kind of lead and guide as far as the advisory council of 9 members. And then altogether we have 79 active members since I said the July rollout with the structured membership. We've also had about 170 participants attend the events in total since July, and we have another one planned in December. They opted for the Lighthouse Lounge for all the Christmas decor. So, all right, and then another initiative is Wilson in the Valley, which was one of my first things I was able to kind of get off the ground and see to, I guess, the finishing product of what it was for this semester. And it was an incredible initiative with a collaborative effort between UNI's Wilson College of Business and Gross Cedar Valley. We did a one-day career crawl, so load up the bus with 30 students, and was able to connect students with local employers as a way to build early beginning belonging and future workforce connections. Total students that participated were around the 30 students, but within a week, that the slots were 30, and it filled up within a week she had to cap off the over 10 wait list because so many people were interested, which also goes to show we had really positive feedback both from employer side and student side, and we plan to continue advancing education to industry partnerships with this initiative. All right, next up is an upcoming newcomer welcome event happening in February that Steph is going to take over from here since she's closely involved in planning it.
Yes, so a newcomer event has been on our radar for a while, and I know Mayor Loddick has also been something that you've wanted us to do as well, which is definitely it's a need and a good thing for us to do. This hasn't happened yet, but we're planning for it for February 28th. And the goal is for it to be, it's aimed at anybody that's moved to the Cedar Valley in the last 2 years, roughly. We won't kick you out if it's 2.5. But it's for people that are, moved here for a job and graduate school or other community reasons. And so their family is welcome to attend. And we're going to have a networking event at Single Speed and then go to the Blackhawks game together as a group. So just a fun way for people to network, get to know other people in the community, maybe other people that have newly moved here. We're going to have some community, ambassadors, advocates to meet these people as well. And the hope is to see kind of how this event goes and maybe have similar events, ongoing as it, in the year, like do maybe multiple ones a year. So that is it for us, and I'll let Katie wrap it up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present our updates here tonight. As you've heard, there's a lot of really exciting things happening at Gross Cedar Valley that have happened in the last 6 months, and we've got a full schedule as we look ahead to the future. Really just want to take this opportunity to say thank you. We really, truly appreciate the collaboration we have with the city. We enjoy the opportunity that we have to work directly with Shane and Mayor Loddick as well, and just really want to remind that we are a resource for all of you. So at any point, if you have questions about the work that we're doing at Gross Cedar Valley, whether it's economic development, talent attraction and workforce, advocacy, or any of the other number of things that we do, we're always here for you. You all have my contact information as well as my team's, and I would encourage you to reach out. So with that, we will open it up for any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. And I'll open it up if council has any questions, comments, discussion. Good job.
Thank you.
All right. Otherwise, I will say thank you to the team because I know you did look like you were going to. You did the. Want to say thank you especially for the time with Lisa and taking the trip over to Hanover. It was one of those we kind of had that we wouldn't have gotten invited to that if it wasn't for Gross Cedar Valley. That was through the Iowa Economic Development Authority, so it was an attraction trip for Iowa, but we got to go along and help sell Iowa, which obviously we get to be there and help put a face to some of those businesses. And so just thank you for all the work you've done the last year especially. I know a lot of great progress on the workforce side, some of the talent attraction, and just appreciate the work you guys are doing.
Super. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. That moves us to item number 2, parking of trailers and other vehicles on unimproved surfaces. I'll preface this a little bit quick while Jamie makes her way to the microphone. So thank you for the patience on this. So staff and I took some time, really dug in on this. Based on, if you remember the last conversation at committee discussion, it's kind of left at that point of wanting us to go back, do some digging. Based on the input I got, trying to meet with everyone, kind of one-on-one, feel out where everyone was at. Also did some follow-up with Attorney Rogers just to really dig in and help us look at the ordinance, look at the wording, look at what it really says and what it currently is requiring. But then also try to take all of your input and figure out, okay, what do we want it to say? Besides, no surprise, probably looking into it, we found the wording is vague and definitely needs to be cleaned up. So the presentation today kind of lays out what the wording is right now on a technical level, just a little bit of the past conversation, but then looking to what is a recommendation for what we want to clean up, because no matter which side of the discussion we were on last time, the current wording just doesn't meet any of it. And so we just want to try and kind of move it toward getting that feeling of what do we really want the wording to say and get that cleaned up in our code. So unless I missed anything, Jamie.
No, I want to say thank you for having me again. And then actually, Mayor just covered my exact intro that I had with what I was going to talk about. So I will jump right into it. So our current enforcement approach is, with the preponderance of code provisions on parking and hard surfaces, our current code enforcement practices are all parking must be on a hard surface regardless of the situation and location. We do give leniency on recreational vehicles and trailers hidden from view from the right-of-way and smaller trailers which are stored empty where grass is well maintained. And we do a complaint-based approach.
You just want to explain that a little more quick?
Yep. So with the complaint-based approach, we don't go out looking for these issues. And so this next slide actually shows how many complaints we've gotten since January of 2024. I wanted to show you guys exactly how many complaints we're receiving specifically on parking. Now, I couldn't divide my report based on parking in the front yard or parking on the right-of-way. So this is 532 complaints related to parking, and I can say just from looking through them, at least 95% of them are backyard and side yard parking, and they're trailers over motor vehicles. So a little more information about that: 89.4% were citizen complaints, 352 were online. The rest were email or phone call, and 90% of them do come in anonymous. So we have a really hard time following up on each of these complaints. And then the 10.6 that were initiated by city staff, we take the approach with all of our code enforcement. If we're going to enforce something at one house and we notice the exact same thing next door or a couple doors down, we try to make it an equal enforcement. And so if we see something on our way to respond to a complaint, we do reach out to both properties. I do want to note that with this report, we did have 532 complaints, but that was just 442 individual properties. There are some we get complaints on over and over again, and we don't have time to resolve the complaint to give the citizen enough time before the complaint comes in again, so that's why there's so many repeat. So after we looked at, or after our last meeting, as Mayor said, we went back through our current ordinances and we worked with Attorney Rogers and really dug into exactly what the ordinance says. So in regards to, I'll kind of go through each of the different steps. So currently there's no prohibition of parking in vehicles in the rear yard. However, there are limitations such as setbacks, rear yard coverage. For example, with rear yard coverage, in the R1 and R2, you can only have 30% of the rear yard covered by parking. Number 2, there's no limit of number of vehicles. Regarding number 1, however, our code very clearly says that once you hit 3 vehicles, that's considered a parking lot, and you have to meet all the parking lot ordinances, which is a paved surface, and there's some landscaping requirements. Number 3, there's no designated rear yard location for parking of vehicles, except the downtown character district does have some lot line setbacks, and so there are requirements there, but no other zones. Number 4, a parking area, which is fewer than 3 spaces, or a parking space in the rear yard has no requirement to be a hard surface. However, there are 2 exceptions. 1, it has to be, a rental property has to be paved, and then also there is a very specific portion of the code that says any access to a parking space or parking location must be paved. So you don't have to park on paving, but to get to that spot, it has to be paved. And then finally, 1 driveway flare out and 1 driveway extension to the side yard is allowed according to the standards, and I've got an image there, and that does have to be paved. So side yard parking has to be paved. The only side yard that's allowed is paved. And then rear yard, it can be on grass, but it has to be a driveway to it and then a limited number.
And if I can throw some commentary in quick, this is where if that number 4 probably seemed a little odd. Essentially, like you said, it says you don't have to pave on the park on the paved surface, but there has to be a paved route to that area. So it's, at some point when this code was created, it just didn't get clearly worded for what that overall layout should be. And that's part of what, looking forward, is do you still have any of the pictures that you'll show later?
I do, yep.
Okay. But that's part of what we're looking to clean up then is essentially right now it's saying if we go by what the rules say is you don't have to park in the paved surface, but you have to have a paved driveway to that unpaved surface if you're going to park there, which obviously is not a very logical thing. So that's a big part of what we're looking to clean up going forward with this.
Yep. So with that information I just provided, we as staff did identify 3 options that we'd like council to discuss and provide staff direction on how to move forward regarding the parking on unimproved surfaces. So the first option is direct enforcement strictly following ordinances in place, so no ordinance change. And so again, as mentioned on the previous slides, this would allow parking in the rear yard on an unimproved surface if there's a driveway leading to it, if there are fewer than 3 cars, and if you don't exceed that maximum coverage area. And then you would be able to park on a paved surface in the side yard. So option 1 is no change, and just a couple of examples of what would be allowed and not allowed. So on the left-hand side, there is a boat there in the backyard. We would not allow that because there was no driveway to that portion. The bottom middle, again, this would not be allowed. There is, it's in the backyard, there are 3 items. It's half on paving, half not on paving, and then there is no driveway to it. And then the third one up at the top would be allowed. There is a boat off of the alley. We would consider that pulling off of the alley to park there would be considered a driveway to the parking spot. Option 2 would be allowed unimproved side yard parking. And so we would have to amend the code to find the parameters. We would continue backyard parking as previously mentioned before, the green area. We would like council to determine number of allowed and setback considerations. Staff would like to make a recommendation based on the things that we read and the complaints we've received to allow on, in the side yard, allow an unimproved surface if located between the house and the required side yard setback, and limit it to 1. Now this is, this drawing hopefully can explain what I'm trying to point out here, but that green area between that setback line and the house, obviously if you build your house to the full allowed area, you wouldn't have an area to park, but if you don't take up your whole lot. So I do have some more pictures for this too. So the first one on the left, there's a boat there parked right in the side yard. They have a very large side yard, so this wouldn't be allowed because it's not within the required setback. The middle one would be allowed, even though it's outside of that outside of that allowed area. It is on a paved surface. And then finally, the one on the right would be not allowed because it is in the required side yard. The third and final option would be allowed to amend to allow limited parking on unimproved surfaces. This is a little bit of a change from the one we presented earlier after your comments, but again, it follows kind of that general idea. So parking of any motor vehicle must be on a hard surface that meets all requirements of 26-220. Except a motor vehicle may be parked on an unimproved surface for up to 48 hours in any consecutive 30 days. Again, understanding people have things going on. I think that there are quite a few houses when I was driving around on Thanksgiving where people were parked in the grass so they could get all their visitors. So that would be an example. And then parking of non-motorized vehicles must be on hard surface that meets all requirements except an unimproved side yard. One non-motorized vehicle smaller than 5 by 8 may be parked on an unimproved surface within any portion of the side yard. Unimproved rear yard. One non-motorized vehicle smaller than 7 by 12 may be parked on an unimproved surface. The driveway portion of the ordinance would not be required for this vehicle. And then again, non-motorized vehicles which exceed those sizes could temporarily be parked for 48 hours within a 30-day time period. Please note, I want to add this note because we get so many complaints about kayaks and canoes, but kayaks, canoes, and bicycles are not considered vehicles and would be allowed to be stored in a yard if maintained around. So while we're talking about trailers, I want to make sure that canoes and kayaks aren't included in that conversation. And then I have examples here for this. So on the left, it's in the required side yard, but it's, again, only one. It's a smaller one. The center one, while not allowed in option 2, would be allowed in option 3 because we said any one within the required side yard. And then finally on the right, it was really hard to find pictures for everything, but this is a camper that is parked in the side yard and it's not on a paved surface, and so it would not be allowed because it exceeds the size. So that leads us to asking council to give us direction on how we should move forward regarding parking on an unimproved surface. Again, option 1 is do nothing, enforce the code as written, so no side yard parking on an unimproved surface. Requires a drive to any parking location, and 3 or more triggers a parking lot standards. Option 2 is taking option 1, but adding side yard parking on an unimproved surface between the house and the required side yard. And then option 3 would be rear yard and side yard parking of a limited number of vehicles and within all of the side yard, and the driveway to unimproved parking is not required. So that is what we're asking you to discuss today to give us guidance, and we hope that we represented what your questions and concerns were from the last meeting.
Thank you, Jamie. And then I'll throw in an intent with option 3 too, is talking with everybody on whether we want to allow for people's use of their private property, but what also still kind of meets that expectation of the neighborly quality of life, not having things that are just stored, sitting around. And so you'll notice a few of the changes we made there was 1, allowing in the rear yard a larger trailer, so up to 7 by 12, a typical Featherlight type of trailer that you would use. I know part of the discussion was the 5 by 8 trailer is a small trailer, and a lot of people might have a 7 by 12 that in the rear yard makes sense. So it was allowing a little more of that use so that people can have some of that on their site without having to put in paid parking and all that expense. But then still having some restrictions there on making sure people aren't just using their lot as a storage lot, which then is where we get most of the complaints, is once people start kind of using their residential lot as a storage area for a lot of things. So with that, let's kind of open it up for discussion, and hopefully we made everything super clear for everyone.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
If I may. Ms. Castle, I wanted to ask you a couple of clarifying questions, if I could, on the picture just before your last one in regards to that.
This one here?
Salem, well, if they put it back up. Yeah, the one on the right. That's on gravel. I know it's larger, so in option 3, where it would have a 7-foot by 12-foot restriction, that'd be too large.
So-
But the gravel paved there, would that not be covered under the pre-existing clause when we required paving on the side yards?
So I'm going to start with saying it was really tricky to find pictures.
Sure.
So when I took this one, I actually didn't think that was on gravel. And so that's why I utilized it. And one of my staff actually said, nope, that one's on gravel. So any gravel that existed before 2015 would be considered a allowed driveway. If it was added after 2015, it would not have been approved. And so that would not be allowed if that was the case when it was added.
Gotcha. So for clarity on my mind then, this one would be allowed for the paving structure, but disallowed because of the size. Is that correct?
So anything on a paved surface can stay.
Whether it's motorized or towable?
Yep. Yeah,
is
as long as it's on a
irrelevant.
paved surface, it is allowed.
That makes sense. Thanks for that clarification. I guess I wanted to talk through with the group too. I'm not arguing for any one of these yet. A 7-foot by 12-foot trailer is not a towable travel trailer. There's very, very few that are 7-foot. Most of them are going to be at least 8 foot, so I think it's too restrictive to be able to allow for that use. And the original intention, when it was, August of 2024, when I originally promoted this, and it passed 7-0 out of a referral, was the goal is to make parking a boat, travel trailer, or the like okay on one's own grass. So, I mean, we talked about this the last committee meeting. This has deviated from that original intention quite a bit. I also stated in that initial referral that I was okay with removing the number restriction. I don't care to argue how we got to where we are. I think it's overreaching from what the initial intention was based on the number of complaints. I'm still of the opinion that we should be okay to allow by and large most of this. I also want to throw out the caution that if we start restricting, I've taken a few sightseeing trips in this particular regard, and there are many, many, many places where residents are okay with their neighbors doing whatever they want on their own property. We even say that when we tell somebody you don't like what the developer's doing in the neighboring property. Well, shucks, you should have bought it if you wanted to control what the neighboring property does. We can't say that the neighboring property has to abide by our standards of beauty. Otherwise, I'd be able to go ahead and spray poison on my neighbor's dandelions. That's just not neighborly. So in that, we have to understand there's a cost to every one of those intentions. The travel trailers, things like that, I can imagine a situation where somebody who is a half-acre or a 1-acre lot in town might have a utility trailer, enclosed or otherwise, along with a boat, and maybe even a towable kayak trailer. I guess one other point of clarification, if you would give me a nod, is the travel trailer itself, if it's only housing kayaks, completely disregarded, or is it still counted as a trailer?
It's counted as a trailer. I'm talking
Right.
specifically
If you just stack kayaks, right. So if somebody has kayak storage on their own garage, that's not part of this ordinance. But if they have a trailer that says maybe carries 4 canoes or 6 canoes or kayaks, that would then be outlawed by any one of these if we say you can only have one. So, I mean, it's too restrictive and heavy-handed to do it citywide. If we've got people that are in certain areas that have those large parcels, that they may have a utility trailer for yard work, another utility trailer for if they want to take their mower over to their grandson's house, and another trailer for their boat, and another trailer for their travel trailer. You're now not allowed to use any of that in your side yard where you've been parking it forever. You now have to put it in your backyard, which just, nobody's asking for this. So the initial request was, make it legal to park your stuff on your yard. Why can't we leave it at that? That's what the initial request was, and it went back and forth from April of 2025 when I asked for the specific citation of where this was outlawed, parking your own stuff in your own backyard. It was responded to April 8th this year with conflicting code sections that did not make it illegal. And we've now said in this presentation that our interpretation is in fact that it is totally legal. It's been over a year and several months. Let's leave this alone. Let people park in their own backyards, remove the restrictive amount from the side yard, make them pave for engines, powered RVs if you want to. But this is not something that was code. It was just a practice that I was trying to say, let's not cite people for parking their vehicles in their backyard. Nobody cares out in certain districts. So I don't know why we have to make it illegal for people to do what they're doing when nobody cares to complain. just doesn't make sense to me to do this heavy-handed. Mr. Mayor.
So I just wanted to get to a few points there. One is that I do think, to the point of it being a complaint-based system, there are tons of rules in the city that only apply when someone complains about it. But if we're going to try and customize this rule for every single individual neighborhood, for districts of town, we're talking about tasking staff with something that will probably take a year worth of staff's entire planning time to develop really complicated ordinances. So I just don't think it's feasible to expect we can treat different areas of town differently without a substantial amount of work. And to the point of, Gil, I'll use North Cedar. There's tons of properties up there that are going to be able to do what they want as long as their neighbors are okay with it. It's not getting called in. They're going to keep doing it. So I do think there's a part here where the rules we're trying to put in place aren't going to restrict someone from using their lot. If their neighbors are okay with it, if they're doing it, it's more for if someone's abusing it. And I know there's always pros and cons with that because it does mean somebody can just be out there calling everybody in for things and ruining some people's quality of life, and maybe they were able to do that before. So I do want to caution around the feasibility of what we're trying to put in place, but also respecting that we do get a lot of complaints about these topics. And I just quick to the point about, if we leave it as is and we just enforce the law as it's written, we can start doing that. But it does mean everyone to use their backyard will have to have a paved driveway to their rear yard, which is a really illogical rule, but that would be what the rule says now. So to leave it as it is does create a weird standard where, okay, well, you still can't technically park in the rear yard unless you have a paved access to it. And that's where we, for sure, I think, want to clean that up, because that's not, I think, the intent when that was created, was to have that type of requirement. So I don't want to say just leave it, because I think that puts it in a weird, illogical spot. And I do think, just because I know it's been a concern a couple times we've talked about this, I do think that was your original referral, but through those conversations, that's where I did not get the feeling there was majority support to just allow parking whatever we want, and that's why I've pushed it in this direction, is I don't think there was a majority support, and we kind of had that vote to kind of see if we wanted to go just for allowing anything, and that did not pass, if I remember correctly. So then we went to the route of, okay, let's talk about this more, put some more thoughts together, and that's why I think we're here, is trying to figure out what's the thing that the majority are looking for to move forward with.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Did you want to say? Okay, go ahead. No, back to you.
I'd like to point out a little clarity here as I read it, where you're saying the preponderance of the code provisions say that all parking must be on hard surface, but the code 220E.6 says all parking lots shall be a number of things, but it references only self-propelled vehicles. So in our code already, it defines for us the fact that unless it's self-propelled, we don't need a parking lot. That's not defined for 3 trailers to be a parking lot. Already stated in the code. Already stated in the code and referenced by Ms. Castle was the unimproved driveways in existence at the time of the enactment shall be basically grandfathered through. I see no reason, to your point of having a driveway to your backyard. We just repeal the requirement to have a driveway to the backyard and we're done. The fact that we have 532 complaints, 89 are by citizens with 90% anonymous, you have no way to know if there's some sort of retribution or vindictive behavior, why they're doing this, why they're complaining on the neighbor. If neighbors get along with each other side by side, that's 99% of a friendly neighborhood. I think with a little bit of clarity here that I just spelled out, repeal the requirement to have a paved driveway to the backyard. Very seldom do you have that many trailers in a backyard that's really going to cause a problem. When I was outdoor knocking, I saw hundreds of trailers and items. Log splitters. Is a log splitter a vehicle? It has wheels on it. It's not self-propelled. I could go on and on with things that we don't need to define and take away a person's right to use their property. And to your point about designing something for the whole community, it doesn't say that a neighborhood could set their own rules and regulations like an HOA or just neighborhood covenants that they can put in for themselves if they so choose, and the people that live there then say, I want to be in a neighborhood that trailers are prohibited completely, let's say, you don't have chain link fences, yada, yada. You can set all kinds of rules. So let the people decide what they want to do in the city. Then we don't have to fine tune it. Thank you.
I will say that is an option. We could just look and give direction to repeal that drive access requirement, and essentially then we're allowing for up to 3 vehicles to park, or 3 or less than 3 vehicles to park, and they're without having a paid service.
Non-motorized.
Ms. Castle, got a couple questions. Jamie, thanks for all. I know it's a lot of digging in. So your 532 complaints that you have gotten, would you say that's kind of typical year to year, year over year?
So I just looked at the last 2 years because I don't have records of phone, and we just went to the online reporting 2 years ago, and I don't have all of our records for previous years, but I would guess it's pretty similar.
Is this gonna, if we go to either stay with what we got, go with 2 or 3 options, is that gonna change, you think? What's gonna help us? What's gonna make us better?
I think that what's going to make us better is a definitive answer, because just as you saw, we've been enforcing one way because the way that we looked at the code, we interpreted it that all parking must be on a paved surface. And then through this whole process, that's when we were able to go, okay, we missed that step. You can park in the backyard, it's just you have to have a driveway. So we're looking as a staff for clarity so that we can enforce it and we can follow up with those complaints and say yes or no, this is allowed, because there's right now some pretty gray areas.
So maybe the mayor's suggestion of getting rid of that part about the paving and then park wherever you want.
Just quite quick, that was not my suggestion. That was me stating an option.
An option.
That's what we all stated.
But I will say that
an
my understanding of majority is that is not the interest, and which is why I have not brought that forward in my recommendation of option 3. Is that's not the
Yeah.
feedback I got from
The concern I have is similar to Mr. Ganfield's and to Darrell's on people's rights to do with what their property that they want. And it's already been stated, you know, I've lived next to some people, didn't care for the way they parked or did their things, but it's their property. So it's going to be interesting to advance this forward. And looking at option 3, there is some good things about option 3, but I also like the idea of not having to pave everything to meet this. And then to Mr. Mayor's point, you've got a concrete slab in your backyard, but nothing on it, I think. But
small one.
yeah, so
Can I use it?
yeah, I want to store a trailer
Charge you
over
for
there.
it.
So that's why I don't want to end up with expense of someone paving an area and then the next person having to pay to have it taken out, and then the landfill that, and the next person, well, then they've got a different thing to pave, and we just have this cycle going where if we just enforce the ordinance that we have on weeds and overgrown bushes and grass and complaints, that would be maybe the route to go, and let people do with their property that they want.
Yeah. Thank you, Counselor. Any other thoughts?
I guess thinking through that point earlier, the number 4, I think it was you mentioned, with the required driveway to the parking area. If the grass is the parking area, the driveway accesses the rear yard. I mean, other than, obviously, if it doesn't have a bump out around the garage. I guess I'm curious, how ambiguous is that language that says a driveway is required to access your backyard? I mean, we're allowing ADUs and things of that nature too. I'm just curious if we're opening a whole nother can of worms by saying, well, you know, we aren't requiring hard surface in the backyard, but we are requiring a driveway to get to the spot where it's parked. How close?
Well, I do think it does say paved surface specifically.
And I have a quick question, Mr. Mayor, if I can. And I think ADUs are also treated differently.
They are.
In a separate section under the parking requirements, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
they are.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, I shouldn't have mentioned it, but, but yeah. I guess that is something I hadn't looked into in that one in particular, and I'm not, contrary to popular opinion, I'm not all about me being right. I just want to make sure that we have this ability for people that just doesn't infringe upon this. You know, I'd somewhat tongue-in-cheek say we had a 7-0 agreement on making sure that the code said it was legal in the backyard, and now we don't. And I proffer that maybe that's because I promoted the idea to begin with, but that's just me. So here we are wondering, how do we allow travel trailers and things that are towable up to 3, it sounds like, in the rear and or side yard without it becoming a citable offense? The travel trailer size on the option 3, 7 to 12, isn't large enough to provide for most popular travel trailers for families. And so you're asking families in an already pinched budget where they're going to be concerned about taxes and grocery bills and all that to have to pay $90 a month to store their travel trailer when they could have stored it previous to this change. So you can't be in favor of number 3 without removing that size restriction or at least increasing it to a more agreeable figure.
Well, I would say that, like the 7 foot, it could be 8 foot. The whole intent is you're trying not to make commercial trailers allowed. You're looking for and we did look up several manufacturers, and typically a 7 by 12 covered, like the normal commercial or residential user trailer. Beyond, but we could, again, I think it's more so for tonight looking for, do we want to allow anything? Or do we want to put some of those use restrictions on the size, a number? And that's where I think we've been stuck as the main conversation piece, is putting in restrictions or allowing anyone to park whatever, maybe up to a restriction of 3.
Mr. Mayor.
1 second, I'll let some of the others haven't spoke yet.
Mr. Mayor. Ms. Castle, can I clarify that the option number 3, am I reading correctly that that is the original recommendation for when
It is
we
very
met the last
close.
time?
We added the sizes, but otherwise it's the same.
Okay. So, I think I want to correct Councilman Ganfield. That was not a 7-0 referral because I specifically remember voting against it, and that's fine. Obviously, the majority went for it. Now, I said this, I think, recently to the mayor that, although I did not vote for that referral, we are where we are now. There's been a lot of work that's been put into this. Councilman Schultz just asked I am paraphrasing, but what's going to be the best for us, the community. And I'm taking, and I guess you maybe don't want to say, but I'm going to go with probably the first, or the number 3 option, if staff did all the work of combing through and seeing where we could be better. Number 3 is probably the answer of what can be the best for the community. Now, again, I think I've said this before, I understand we want, the freedom to do for ourselves on our own property. I fully get that. I think that's a very American way of thinking or whatever. And that's great. But at the same time, as I said, I think in the last one, but we're living in a 40,000 plus community. So there is some, there's some, I guess, compromise. And I do appreciate when you say that it's by a complaint basis. So yeah, there's a few things in my neighborhood that probably isn't up to our code, but you know your neighbors, and you just don't say anything. So I know that happens, but at the same time, there are times, and I think we've all probably witnessed it, because we do get complaints about properties not being in compliance and bothering other neighbors. And I think in my mind, I want to have some teeth to be able to help that situation when needed. So I'm thinking option number 3 in my mind is, although I wasn't supportive of this referral to begin with, the work's been done, and I think if this adds clarification, can I ask one other question? When we say that, like, there wouldn't have to be a hard surface, so could somebody drive back to their backyard every day and create I'm thinking of would they just be allowed to kill their grass and have ruts and kind of a mess that can happen sometimes when you do that?
That's probably the number one complaint. The reason we get the complaints about the trailers in the backyard is the torn up grass and the mud on the street and things like that.
Yeah. And there's a couple, again, we're all just trying to live in the neighborhood, and I'm not trying to throw some of my neighbors under the bus, but that happens. And, you know, it's just kind of, it just doesn't add anything great to the character of the neighborhood, I can say that. So anyway, yeah, I just wanted to say that. I wasn't for this, but I can recognize we're here. I can appreciate the work that's been done. And I'm thinking number 3 is the way that I'm feeling is going to be the best for our community.
Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Mayor, for me to ask a clarifying question,
Yeah, go ahead, quick.
unless he's up first.
Well, I guess my question for Ms. Castle is, so in the example that Mr. Ganfield talked about too, that the travel trailer is on apparently a rock,
Oh, gravel.
on gravel. From the point now, if we go with option 3 and they park that, a similar situation, that person would have to pave that area to park their travel trailer, or where could they park their travel trailer?
If the area's paved or if the gravel was put there before 2015, they could continue to park that way. Any new side yard parking is required to be paved, and what we're saying with option 3 is anything that size would be required to be on a paved surface. So we're not saying you can't park your travel trailer, we're saying that if you want to park it, it has to be on an approved surface that meets all the code or all the ordinance sections.
And the 7 by 12?
Yep.
That size trailer, you could park on the side without a hard surface?
So in the option 3, we actually have the 7 by 12 we're saying can be parked in the backyard, and then a 5 by 8 in the side yard. And the reason that we did the 2 different sizes is because what we have seen parked in the side yards are typically smaller, and there's less space, and so less chance to encroach on your neighbor's property. And so that's why we define the 2 different sizes. But we understand there's more space in the backyard. We usually be able to park a larger one in the backyard.
And then just to reiterate, you can park anything you want on, well, not anything, but on a paved surface. So if you have a big RV or something, and you would still need a paved surface, but you can still park that type of thing on your property just as long as it's paved.
Mr. Mayor?
1 second though.
I'll let him
Or do you
ask
still
the
need your
question.
clarifying question? Go ahead.
Yeah. So the clarifying question then, I guess, is to what is allowed then in option 3. I appreciate the compromise and the clarification from Councilmember Dunn. I did not recall that it was 6-1, but I appreciate that. The restrictive sizes are for the unimproved parking. Is there then your intention to put in maintain the restriction of no more than 1 in the side yard for any of those sizes that are unpaved?
That's, well, on paved, as long as it meets all of the parking requirements. So, and I'm going to have to say that Karen can probably describe that better, but there are requirements for only 1, and it has to be behind the face of the house. So we would maintain that's what's in the code. But for the unimproved, again, it could be 1, and it can be parked anywhere within that side yard.
Okay. And I guess I'm just trying to make sure where we're at for existing uses. If we're going to change, if we're going to pivot and move where somebody's like, I've never had a complaint, but I'm a law-abiding citizen, and now you've changed the rules on me. I didn't know. I want to comply. Now they're going to have to move something off of their paved side yard and put it in their backyard. But that may be allowable up to 3 on the unimproved in their backyard. But you could not have a situation in option 3 where you'd have a large travel trailer or RV parked on the paved side yard, and then another utility trailer or boat trailer or otherwise next to that on the grass. It would have to be parked behind the house, correct?
It's really going to come down to the size of the yard. In the pictures that I showed earlier, if you look at that first one on the left, that's a very large area. If that boat happened to be on a paved surface, and they actually do have a second trailer in this on this property, that second trailer, we're going to allow that because they're complying on the 1. Now, if it was the middle photo where there's absolutely no space and they tried to do that and put another trailer, it's really going to come down to what we see. And I know that we want to enforce the code exactly how it is, but again, it comes down to complaints. And when I first started the presentation, I kind of talked about we give some leniency, and that's because we do understand people are using their property as best they can. And so if they're not creating a nuisance, we try to allow things to continue to occur.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarification. I think One of the difficulties we have here, and the reason that this came up, was we want to be able to enforce the ordinance as written, right? Like if it's the letter of the law is this, then let's enforce that. And if we're not enforcing it, it's because no one cares. So we should repeal that law. That was the original sentiment behind this. What happens with the leniency and the interpretations begets subjective enforcement, which I was yelled at, being told that there is not subjective enforcement. But complaint-based enforcement is only subjective enforcement. So in my estimation, it made more sense to repeal the law that the majority don't give two rips about. But again, as Councilmember Dunn said, we're here. This is where we are. I wonder if option 3 might work. I would still not like it, but.
Mr. Mayor.
No.
One
no,
sec here.
Go ahead. You'd like
Go ahead,
to go
Aaron.
first?
Sure.
Go ahead.
You can go first. It's
Sure.
all right.
Mr. Mayor, I've heard from several folks in my ward on this, and really, I think what it comes down to is exactly what we've just heard. So while 90% of these are citizen-based complaints, I would venture to guess that those 90% are not in the areas that we're overly concerned about. The areas that we're concerned about, are the areas that we would not expect to see the preponderance of this issue. The areas that we're talking, boy, you could have a real rationale to have a lot more than maybe what this is, your North Cedars, your wherever, maybe on your borders of town. I don't think you're going to have these complaints, because again, I think this has become the norm. I think this is a neighborly thing, and I don't think this is an issue. Now, when you get into the inner core of town, I personally don't want to be sitting in a neighborhood where I've got yards torn up because people haven't paved or haven't taken the proper steps to not have the yard eroded out, have mud everywhere, have dirt everywhere. So I understand that concern as well. I think option 3 really is a really reasonable option. And again, I don't know that I really feel strongly that if, to Councilmember Canfield's point, that if you've had somebody that has been doing this all along and they've not had a complaint filed against them or lodged against them, I don't know that that's going to change, even if we have this. But if it does, we do know how now have a ordinance that would give us some teeth to say, hey, this isn't just us arbitrarily saying, you, sir, who have done this for 10 years are now being picked on. No, there's a rationale behind it. So I'm inclined to say 3, just because, again, I think that it clears things up. It makes things a little more enforceable for staff. But I also don't think it necessarily forces change in all areas of town. So for me, that seems to be the best option. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor.
Now I'm ready. All right, thank you. Well, what he said, it provides clarity enforcement, option 3. And it is a complaint-based process, so really we're just responding to those situations where the good neighbor factor hasn't kicked in. And, you know, a reminder is that none of us have unfettered freedom on our property. That's the nature of a zoning ordinance. Our uses are restricted. That's the zoning ordinance. And the whole idea behind the zoning ordinance is to kind of have those parameters out there to dictate the use so that we can kind of ensure good neighborliness when there are difficulties, and we have something that we can enforce. And so I'm in favor of 3 because of the clarity. I don't think we need to have it paved back to the parking area. And a reminder to everybody else on the council that there are a lot of other things that will restrict the parking back there, setback requirements, those sorts of things. And obviously you're not going to have a used car lot back there or a bunch of trailers because of the max of 3. It's 3, correct? Right. And then you have to have it, or it's 2. Once you get to 3, it's a parking lot, right? Okay. So I'm in favor of this. Maybe we can tweak the dimensions, but I trust the research on the 7x12 does most of the non-commercial uses. If we need to move it up to 8x12, great. But overall, I'm in favor of option 3 and ready to move on.
Thank you, Counselor.
Would you mind if I add one
Yeah.
more thing? In regards to the complaints, I guess one of the things that I should have said that would maybe have clarified a lot of this, we don't get many complaints about the backyard. What we're getting complaints about are, can we bring the pictures back up?
It's the side yards.
All 3 of these have been complaints, or not the middle one because it's paved, but those are all complaints. And so right now it is not allowed to park in the side yard, anything unless it's paved. And so option 2 and 3 would provide some options for that. But we really, very few of the complaints are regarding backyard parking. So.
Thank you, Jamie.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
So the direction we're going with, if we choose number 3, then that's going to change the section of 220 that allows, or excuse me, spells out that parking lots are for self-propelled vehicles. So 3 trailers still would not require a paved parking area according to the definition currently in 220. That's how I read it. So if option 3 will allow 3 trailers in the backyard, non-motorized vehicles, let's say, I think the 7 should go to 8 because that's what the legal, whatever the legal vehicle coming down the street is, highway. I know several people, friends of mine, that have 8-foot wide, 8'6", homemade, they're legal, licensed. Okay. I don't like these measurements here. You know, yeah, you got to have a number, but the state of Iowa determined what is a legal vehicle to go down the road. And if you're worried about commercial vehicles, you see if it's a commercial semi, of course, that ain't going to be allowed. You spell out that you don't want commercial vehicles. That's easy to see.
Like one example we looked at was like fifth wheel trailers, where you start getting to like 18-foot trailers and
Sure.
those that we felt wouldn't really fit, because then you're getting to a commercial use. It's not really identified as a commercial trailer.
Fifth
But
wheel camper, what do you do with that? Is that allowed?
depending on the size format, if it fits that.
7 by
size
12? It
description.
wouldn't. So I realize zoning prohibits and also allows certain uses, but the peaceable enjoyment of your property should be such that you can have some wide latitude on using it. We pay dearly in our property taxes in Cedar Falls, and I don't like restrictions, but, and the question then would be on a boat is often longer than 12 feet. How do you treat that then? Is it the trailer that the boat sits on? Do you measure that?
I believe it'd be the dimensions of the boat as well. Like if it's hanging
Okay.
off, it would include that.
So then what's going to happen, all these people that have their boat in the backyard will probably now start parking it in their driveway and let it sit there. And the
Well, I would
neighborhood would
say-
love that.
Kind of the Councilor Gamfield, I think, lattice point, putting this in place won't change. If they were going to get called in, they would have already gotten called in and been enforced, because the way we're enforcing
Well-
it, which we realized wasn't accurate to the code, was that nothing was allowed. So we're really not putting any additional constraints in place over what
Well-
was being enforced. We are putting additional restrictions over what is there currently, and opening up restrictions a bit on the side, so that, because right now you can't park anything without having a paved surface.
And Mr. Mayor, tongue-in-cheek comment, but I don't think anybody's going out with a tape measure to figure out whether this is 7 by 12 or 8 by 12. I think we're belaboring the point.
I think they will, though.
Okay, I
Right
will
now,
say from an enforcement standpoint, we can't enter the property. Typically, it's a visual look to say, okay, does that look like it's within? And then if we get follow-up complaints, we may ask the individual if we can.
Well, to
Check
to
it.
Mr. Latta's point, why do we have a dimension if we're not too worried about it by sight? You know, if it's a 10-foot wide for some reason or whatever with wide load sign on it, that's obviously probably commercial and over the limit. I think 9 foot is your limit for going down the highway. I'm pretty sure 9 foot is. I could be wrong, but there's another point I was going to make. Having the mud in the street, isn't that something enforceable through the water? I can't think of the proper thing, but you can't have mud drug out into the street. That's a violation of other codes, correct?
Under building code and stormwater protection, you can't have, I don't know how that
Right,
would
but
apply towards somebody
well,
just dragging mud on their tires. But
then, okay, I want to go back to the anonymous situation. My understanding is a huge number of these complaints came from one part of town. That's what I was told. And we have people reporting things, driving around, looking and looking and looking. If you just tell the person and clarify these existing codes that there is no issue there, then it should go away.
There is one specific area that we get a lot of complaints from, but it is citywide. When I went through and looked at them, there are obviously one neighborhood that is reviewed quite often and sent in for anonymous complaints, but it is citywide that we're getting complaints. It isn't just one neighborhood.
Okay. I'm still concerned when somebody has an acreage, half acre and bigger, acre, 2 acres, 5 acres. They have a barn, they have horses, multiple trailers. The letter of the law that we're putting in here will restrict them. A horse trailer is bigger than 7 by 12, typically. Maybe not. I just have a problem with the numbers of what's being restricted. If you put something on the books to enforce, you can't say, oh, well, somebody calls in and says, the letter of the law says it can only be 7 by 12. Now you have horse trailers or other equipment for farming and acreage, and what do you do with a disc or a drag or a tractor? It's a motorized vehicle. Can that sit on the grass beside the barn? You know, you're going into nuances in our city that this is going to trigger complaints according to the code.
Okay, I don't think it'll trigger any complaints, because those complaints could have been made to this point. Because I do understand that we are putting on the books specific regulations, but at the same point, I will say to this point, what's been enforced, and it wasn't correct to what's in the code, and that's what we clarified, but what's been enforced to this point is that nothing can be parked. So if anything was going to be enforced and called in, it would have already been happening. So really, at this point, we're trying to clarify. We are making it more official what's in the code to make sure it reflects what we're doing, but also an intent of this is to allow some more usage on the side. But again, from a feasibility standpoint, there's no way we can ever design a rule that can apply to every case scenario. So in a situation like this, I feel you do make what's the best option you can, knowing it's never perfect, but I don't think there's any way we can feasibly craft a rule like this. And that's why you can see why this is such a back and forth, is there's so many just nuances, little technicalities we could throw in here. At a certain point, we have to craft what's the best we can do, knowing that some of it's based on, are people neighborly, are they working with each other? But then it's really to help us maintain what is that rule that we want to set, that if someone does call in, we're comfortable saying this is a decent standard for what we expect that applies to the majority of the community as much as we possibly can.
Mr. Mayor, I think that's the main issue where we disagree on how to approach this. Trying to make it clear in regulation and red tape isn't easy. So the request was, tell them it's legal when someone calls and complains. Tell them they can park what they want on their own backyard. We don't have to make it restrictive. There's enough ordinance in all the other layering to keep the muddy ruts out of people's backyards and the grass heights and the vermin out and all these other ordinances that we have layered everywhere. We could have said, it's legal, thank you for calling. That would answer it.
Mr. Mayor, in an attempt to land the plane without parking it in your side yard, is there a way that we can vote up or down options 1 through 3? I mean, we've been on this now
But there's nuances of each one that don't fit.
fully get it. That's why I'm asking if there's an option to
I mean, at
vote
this
down
point,
options
it's looking
1
for
through
someone to make a motion to move
Mr.
forward
Mayor,
with something.
I'd like to make a motion for option 3.
3. Second.
Any additional discussion on moving ahead with option 3? And I'll say from what I heard from conversation, looking at that 7 to 12 and those sizes to make sure they're accommodating for those common use types, which was the intent of that.
I'd like to amend that motion to choose the current ordinance that we have with clarity added for the motorized vehicles for the parking lot and access to the backyard not being hard surfaced, because that would accomplish everything we need.
I'm going to, Attorney Rogers, that's not an amendment, that's a different motion.
So that's not a germane amendment. It's stating a new proposition.
Because that's substantive enough. You're really just recommending a different path. So I'd say first we need to review the current motion, vote on that, and then we can come back to that.
Well, the current ordinance is close enough to 3, just with some minor differences. It's germane.
But you're essentially recommending going with a whole different option that was proposed versus the option someone's made a motion. So you're really motioning a different option than making an amendment to the current one. Any other discussion on looking at going ahead with option 3? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Did you catch that? Or do you want to do a show of hands? Show of hands. Thank you. And then all opposed? All right, that motion carries 4-3. So we'll work on putting more details together and bringing that back to council. So
So, Mr. Mayor, for clarity, are they going to fine tune option 3 based on our conversation?
So especially the size of the trailer, we'll make sure and look at that for making
Right.
sure it's accommodating for the typical use type of what types of trailers people would have. And then,
And the fact that the parking of 3 and over is self-propelled vehicles, as is already stated.
well, if you want to send that to me, I'll make sure we review it. We did a pretty in-depth review. I don't know what you're talking about off
26-220E5 and 6.
26.
220E5 and 6. One talks about the grandfathering, which apparently is 2015. And then number 6 talks about all parking lots shall be arranged, marked in a manner which provides safe and orderly loading, unloading, maneuvering, parking, and storage of self-propelled vehicles.
So we'll review it, just 'cause I'm not sure which section it's in or what area it's specifically applying to, but we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, I'll be glad to look at that, but I did look at it before. And there's another section that refers to the standards of 220, and 220 is the standards. So when you're talking about striping and so forth for parking lot, it's to accommodate motor vehicles that are parked in said parking lot. But it's not, the other section doesn't refer to this section, and this section says, no, that other section didn't mean what it said. So I understand the question, but you're applying it in a way that the ordinance wasn't intended to be applied. But I'd be happy to look at it again.
Well, I also pulled up an area where it says all parking lots containing 3 or more parking spaces, hard surface, shall meet stormwater detention requirements. That'll be fun in a backyard. Continuous curbing or wheel blocks, properly marked for parking spots and driveway aisles, and provide screening for headlights. Well, trailers don't have headlights. So you're getting into a very convoluted.
Mr. Mayor, those are parking lots, I believe.
That's what we're talking about, having 3 vehicles in the backyard being parking lots. What's the definition of a vehicle? Self-propelled or non-self-propelled, as in trailers,
And
boats?
I was looking at 5 and 6 there. Where's the definition of vehicle in those? That's what I was trying to figure out. Anyway, we can look at it.
So we'll make sure that it's
Yeah,
addressing all the areas of code that might need to be addressed.
Yeah, this is far from cut and dry to be number 3. There's lots of nuances that need to be. I lean towards it a little bit, as long as we cover and allow certain things.
We'll look at that and see what they
Okay.
say. All right, otherwise, that is the end of the committee meeting, so we'll adjourn here, and we'll be back at 7:20 for the regularly scheduled council meeting. So thank you, everyone, and apologize to anyone watching for the delay.
Oh.
What'd you say?